All right, so think about this. Every single day, there's this massive, invisible river of cargo flowing across the US-Canada border. But we're not talking about cars or lumber here. We're talking about trash. And today, we're going to unpack how this huge flow of garbage went from being a simple business deal to a serious, high-stakes geopolitical weapon.
Yeah, look at that number. Nearly 3.5 million tons. That's how much Canadian trash, mostly from Ontario, gets trucked into Michigan landfills every single year. You heard that right. And this isn't just a few truckloads. It's over 14% of all the waste that gets dumped in the entire state. We're talking about a massive, systemic dependency. So the obvious question is why, right? Why on earth would you truck millions of tons of garbage across an international border? Well, like with so many things, the answer really just boils down to money. It all comes down to this thing called a tipping fee. It's basically just a state tax for every ton of garbage you dump in a landfill. And get this, for decades, Michigan's fee was an unbelievably low 36 cents per ton. 36 cents. At the same time, the regional average was floating around $5. So I mean, it was a no-brainer. This huge price difference turned Michigan into a giant economic magnet for any Canadian company looking to save a buck on disposal. And this isn't some new thing that just started happening. Nope. For over 20 years, Ontario has been relying on the U.S. to take about a third of all its waste. That's over 40 million tons shipped to Michigan just since 2006. And it's not mainly your kitchen garbage bags either. We're talking about industrial, commercial, and institutional waste, the heavy-duty stuff from businesses that just don't have many good reasons to recycle. It's created this deep structural problem that's been building for a long, long time. So this deal that's been going on for decades, well, it's finally starting to blow up. It's creating a full-blown crisis with serious consequences on both sides of the border. You see, both Ontario and Michigan are facing a day of reckoning, but for totally different reasons. Over in Michigan, people are just fed up. And you can't really blame them. For years, the public has been pretty vocal about this. The feeling is that Michigan is stuck with the environmental bill, the pollution, all the truck traffic, using up their limited landfill space, all for another country's garbage. This quote from Governor Whitmer really says it all, and it's a feeling that's been shared by politicians there for a long time. Now, for Ontario, the crisis is different. It's about capacity. They are literally running out of space. Their own landfills are filling up and fast. I mean, look at this chart. If they can keep sending their trash to Michigan, they've got until about 2037. But what if that border suddenly slams shut? Bam, they're completely out of space by 2034. That little 3-year difference shows a massive failure in their planning and a huge vulnerability. It's a ticking time bomb. Okay, and this is where the story really takes a turn. Because Ontario's desperate need for Michigan's landfills, well, it hasn't gone unnoticed. In this new era of really intense trade negotiations and protectionism, this quiet little garbage route has been dragged onto the world stage and turned into a political weapon. The main stage for this fight is the USMCA, the big trade deal that replaced NAFTA. It has this little clause built in, a sunset review, that's scheduled for July 2026. This is where all 3 countries, the US, Canada, and Mexico, have to get together and decide if they want to extend the deal. It puts literally everything on the negotiating table. And in that kind of environment, any weakness becomes a bargaining chip. And you can feel the tension has been building. First, you had broad tariffs getting slapped on goods in early 2025. Then, the whole conflict got a lot more formal by early 2026. Now, all eyes are on that July review. And suddenly, Ontario's garbage problem isn't just a local issue. It's now a glaring weakness for Canada at the international negotiating table. So, with the old system totally collapsing under all this political pressure, what happens? Well, everyone starts scrambling. And I mean everyone. The politicians in Michigan, the officials in Ontario, and of course the giant corporations that actually handle all this waste. They're all racing to come up with new strategies to deal with this incredibly volatile new reality. And right now, we're seeing 3 totally different game plans emerge. First, you've got Michigan trying to build what's basically a legislative wall. They want to jack up that tipping fee by more than 1,300% to make it too expensive. Then you have Ontario, which is pushing for waste sovereignty. They're trying to fast-track new, pretty controversial landfills so they don't have to rely on the U.S. anymore. And the corporations? They're making a big pivot to technology, pouring money into things like AI sorting, automation, and turning landfill gas into clean fuel. And this isn't just talk. Here's a perfect example of that tech pivot. GFL, one of the biggest players in this whole trash trade, is investing heavily in turning landfill methane into something called renewable natural gas. They're set to produce 14.5 million MMBTU of this stuff. That's a unit of energy every year. Just think about that. They're taking what used to be a smelly, polluting liability and turning it into a high-value product. That's a total game changer for their business model.
So, what does this all add up to? Well, it's the end of an era. It's that simple. The basic economics and the politics that shaped how North America has dealt with its trash for decades, they are being completely torn up and rewritten as we speak.
And this is really the most important thing to take away from all this. The old way is broken. The model built on Michigan's super cheap prices and Ontario's, let's face it, lack of planning, it's done. Whether it's because of new fees, trade wars, or just running out of physical space, the days of sending trash across the border without a second thought are over. This new reality is being defined by what some folks are calling a triple threat. First, you've got regulatory chaos, with unpredictable policy changes happening on both sides. Second, you have trade protectionism, where your garbage is now part of an international power play. And third, you've got the most basic problem of all, infrastructure scarcity. We are physically running out of places to put all our stuff. These three forces are fundamentally reshaping the entire industry for good. So this leaves us with one last pretty critical question. The system that let us get rid of our trash cheaply and easily is gone. The costs, the environmental costs, the political costs, and the financial costs are all going up. So the real question isn't if we're going to pay, it's who's going to pay the price and what will that price ultimately be.